this is Shawn. And what you're about to hear is episode 55 of the Free Range Texan podcast. Yes, my friends, we're back. And it's been quite a ride. We have known since we set out to produce episode 55 that our 4-month hiatus of our monthly podcast was about to be produced. It was what we refer to as a skeleton podcast. Not quite so fleshed out as what we were doing before. But we all agreed it was time that we checked in. So now, in the first podcast since we've hit the comeback trail, with your permission, I would like to share a very personal story of what happened when COVID-19 came to visit me. There seems to be as many COVID stories as there are people struck down by the virus, particularly for those on the more severe side. It was toward the end of October of last year when I fell ill to COVID. My wife got it at the same time, and only 2 weeks later, she tested COVID-free. And other than getting her strength back for a time, she was able to resume her normal life. I, however, would not clear the ravages of the virus quite so easily. Here's what happened. The first week at the end of October of last year, I began to circle the drain pretty quickly. I called a roundtable meeting of all of the people involved with A-Team PR, and we decided to step back from the John Donneberg podcast and also from Roger Dyke's Just Saying podcast, putting all of those on hiatus and, of course, closed down the production on Free Range Texan. We had no choice. And by Monday of the following week, we would see that my premonitions were correct. First, let me tell you that I didn't go to the hospital, although it was discussed considerably. But allow me to explain. I am blessed with a remarkable personal physician who was and is connected with the major hospitals in our area. Immediately, there were a number of pieces of equipment that were made available to me at my home. Blood pressure gauges, oxygen concentrators, pulse ox measuring devices, blood sugar monitors. And with all of that, I was immediately provided with prescriptions designed to help knock the virus back. As some of you may note, I am still not back at 100% as far as my voice is concerned, but it gets better all the time. Now, don't misunderstand what I'm telling you. If your doctors order you to the hospital, you should go. I won't spend a lot of time here on the fact that personally, my symptoms had increased to the point that if I went to the hospital, I felt like I might not come back. It was just a feeling. But here's what happened next. It got to the point that my master-degreed healthcare professional son, Cody, told me, "Dad, if your numbers don't improve by in the morning, I'm taking you to the ER." I felt as though I was losing control of my own life, or at least my own care. My wife did a remarkable job of administering pharmaceuticals to her what was by then couch-ridden husband. Then, my friends, it got weird. As I remember it, it happened like this, more or less. And believe you me, there were a couple of days that I have no memory of at all. Next thing I know, I'm sitting in the den of my home that I have lived in for a number of years, 10 or more. I recognized the den where I was sitting because I was sitting in it, but that is all. If you go in one direction out of that room, on the rare instances where I felt like standing up, there is a bathroom there down the hall that I knew how to get to, and 3 bedrooms that I felt afraid to enter because I had no recollection of what was in these rooms. My wife had shown me that if I went the other direction from the den, I would immediately be in the kitchen. And beyond the kitchen was our master bedroom. For a number of days, I felt fearful of walking into the kitchen. I don't know why, but I was just unfamiliar with everything. I didn't recognize my own kitchen anymore. I remember looking for a glass one day when I got up the nerve to go in there to get a drink of water. And I had to open several cabinets to find a simple glass. But here's the really weird part. Beyond the kitchen was our master bedroom that I had been sleeping in every night for years. Not only did I not enter the room without my wife taking me in there, but as she would take me in the bedroom at night, I would look around and I didn't recognize any of it. This went on for a number of days. I remember the night that I talked myself into realizing that it was, after all, my own bedroom, and thinking that quite possibly I remembered the place. Then there was the time that I first ventured out the back door into our backyard. Our German Shepherd, Foxy, greeted me, but that was the only thing I recognized. I felt uneasy about walking away from our back porch, and I remember the time I was struggling to put more than 2 or 3 words together to create a sentence. The concept of writing scripts for Studio A for our podcast, The Free Range Texan, was incomprehensible. I had lost myself, and no one around me understood exactly where I had gone. How could they? I was the only one experiencing all of these symptoms and more. A couple of weeks later, I was taken to my personal physician's clinic and retested. I was told that I was COVID negative. In other words, it had run its course. But honestly, it left me just a shell of the man I was before. So you may ask, what have I been doing for 4 months? Well, let me explain. Whether it is the respiratory system or simple things like my equilibrium, and some other issues like a remarkable cough, which was tearing my voice to threads, COVID, for me, had been like a house guest that came and stayed for 2 weeks, shutting down a number of my cognitive systems and then just packing up and leaving. But the damage that it did to my respiratory system and my brain, although getting slightly better these past months, has been far beyond what anyone told me to expect. My energy levels are better, but seemingly for a time I had no energy at all. But here's the part that doctors will tell you that they are just now understanding. COVID-19 kicked down doors in one portion or another of my brain. At first, simple math was just not anything that I could concentrate on. collecting my thoughts to write down a statement was beyond me. And long-term memory seemed to be intact, but short-term memory, well, let's just say it had left the building. I could begin a sentence, and suddenly, before I could complete the thought, I suddenly forgot where I was going. And it happened a lot. And when it comes to creatively putting together a project like the Free Range Texan podcast, in the past weeks it's been something that I can barely even think about. That's if I had the voice to deliver it. So here's what I'm telling you. COVID-19 existed inside of me and lived in me for a couple of weeks. But the months since, I've been struggling to overcome the damage that it did throughout my body and mostly in my respiratory system and brain. My equilibrium, sketchy at best, but that's not coming from my inner ear. It's been explained to me that that's the result of the brain that has been kicked around by my COVID guest. Well, simply put, my friends, I'm not at 100%, but I'm probably running at about 85 or 90. Sometimes better than others. So here's what I would say to you, my listeners. The COVID virus is real, although more for some and less for others. If you're living with issues like diabetes, high blood pressure, thyroid problems, and a host of other things, my advice to you is take care of yourself. Diabetics, don't let your blood sugar get out of control while you're fighting COVID, because it leads to a host of other problems that you'll deal with for months afterwards. I remember laying there with my eyes closed during one of the darkest times and becoming aware that I could die. I was standing on the edge. I remember that moment, making a conscious decision to live. I had friends ask me, how bad was it? I said, well, I didn't pass away, but I could see the pearly gates from where I was at. If you're one of those individuals that get the virus and a couple of weeks later you're past it, I'm happy for you. But if it flings you into a fight for your life, get help. So here we are. Episode 55 of the Free Range Texan podcast. There were quite a number of weeks if I wondered if we'd get back here. But we have. Now, honestly, I can't tell you for sure what all is coming in the future of our podcast. But I know that this is what we have today. Speaking of which, we've managed to crank out a Michael Shawn's campfire. And that's coming up just moments from now. But before we do that, I've got something that, well, the first time I heard it almost brought tears to my eyes because I realized how far we had come. I don't know how many of you will be familiar with a fellow by the name of Nick Battle. He's a talented singer and songwriter, and we have special permission to share this with you. He's just recorded a little tune that I think fits. It fits these times that we're all in. I don't care who you are. I know that you have been affected one way or another by this thing that we have gone through, this worldwide pandemic. So before we go to the campfire, here's Nick Battle and a song for all of us called you've got this.
I want you to know that you've got this. Don't let nobody tell you any different. This is your world, and this is your life, so just live it. You deserve to be happy like everyone else. But you gotta tell yourself you've got this. I want you to know that you've got this. No, you've got this. Yeah, you've got this. You've got this. And this ain't the end of your world. 'Cause you've got this. To every boy and girl, I want you to know that. Hate gon' hate, but you just got to shine. This your life and you've got this. I want you to know that you've got this. Yeah, you've got this. Oh, no, you've got this. 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 Everything's gonna be alright. 'Cause you've got this. I want you to know that you've got this. Look in the mirror, you've got this. I can't say it no clearer. You've got this. You can do it, you've got this. Just stay true, 'cause you've got this. You've got this. Know that you've got this.
Hello, this is Michael Shawn. Grab you some coffee over there. Have a seat at our campfire. You know, it occurs to me every time I relate a story about a large, hairy creature living in the woods all around the United States, there is this certain segment of the listeners that scoff and say, "Oh, Michael, not again." But before I proceed with what I'm about to tell you now, please take into account that there are literally hundreds of Texans in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, including law enforcement officers, who have witnessed the broad daylight appearance of what everyone calls the Goat Man. Located in the northeast quadrant of Dallas is the beautiful and mostly serene area of White Rock Lake. The northern part of the lake is now a state park, while the southern area has been developed into waterfront estates. The lake is also known to have a creature stalking its shores. Stories abound from people who were picnicking at the lake at the end of the day and reported seeing this creature, always described as half man, half goat, coming out of the woods, throwing trash, and even discarding car tires at the visitors as if he were trying to drive them away. The Goat Man is described as a very large creature, about 7 feet tall, with the horns and hooves of a goat, but standing erect. The body and legs are those of a man, and the face of a human-like person or thing. This skin has a jaundice appearance, almost greenish, and he has long, snarly fingers with grotesque fingernails. It's been considered that this poor abomination of nature is trying to drive people away from his feeding grounds of local fish and game. It's thought that he may be migrating further from his White Rock Lake home as development continues to gobble up the area and the natural habitats, as is the case for a lot of Texas wildlife. In the wee hours of June 10th, 1969, Mr. and Mrs. John Reinhardt showed up at the Fort Worth police station, where they told a terrifying story. They said they had been parked along the edge of Lake Worth around midnight when a huge beast leapt out of nowhere and landed on their car. They said it was covered with fur and scales and looked like a cross between a goat and a man. 4 police units raced to the scene, only to find nothing. However, there was an 18-inch scratch running along the side of the witness's car. They swore the scratch had not been there before, and were sure it was from the monster's claws. Then, in the following couple of months, other reports began to be received by law enforcement there. Law enforcement said the frightening and aggressive nature of the attacks made them take the incidences more seriously. Only days later, Metroplex resident Jack Harris was driving on the road to the Lake Worth Nature Center. He spotted the creature crossing in front of him. It ran up the hill and then turned and ran back down, and was soon being watched by 30 to 40 people. Most were hoping to get a glimpse of the creature, as the Fort Worth Star-Telegram had carried the story the day before. Within moments, deputies from the sheriff's office were on the scene as well, observing this remarkable sight. Then some of the observers tried to approach the creature. It threw a car tire at them and escaped into a thicket. The Lake Worth monster is an old legend from back in the 60s, but from time to time, it's seen again. It's basically a Bigfoot-style creature. There are 70 to 90 reports officially of people encountering the creature. Everyone agrees it has a rather bad temper and is known for throwing objects at people who disturb it. Charles Buchanan said he had been sleeping in his sleeping bag in the back of his pickup truck when he was attacked by the monster. Quick thinking allowed Buchanan to shove a bag of chicken at the creature. The creature stuffed the chicken in its mouth and jumped into the lake and swam away. While the Goat Man has not had any reported sightings around the Dallas-Fort Worth wooded areas in a number of years, authorities are almost certain that it is likely that it has moved on when its territory gets crowded. So it's only a suggestion, but when you're enjoying the great Texas outdoors, day or night, you might want to keep an eye out for the Goat Man. Thanks for joining us here at our campfire for another true Texas tale. I'm Michael Shawn. Adios, my friends. Seems like episode 55 was a long time coming. But here we are, returning to our monthly rollout schedule on the first day of each month. And we're all glad to see this episode 55 take flight. Now is when we would normally give a little sneak preview of episode 56. But honestly, we don't have a clue. Oh, I'll get in trouble for saying that, by the way. They'll call me in on that one, and they'll say, don't tell them that. We're supposed to know what we're doing. So that is funny, isn't it? Yeah, right. Well, we're actually just restarting our engines, folks. And you know how it is when you got your favorite old pickup in storage in the barn for months and months at a time, and then you go out and turn the key and hold your breath just to see if everything still works. And that's the way we approached episode 55. By the way, thank you so much for all of your thoughts and prayers, emails, phone calls. All of you really helped pick me up. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I've already had some people ask me, and the answer is yes. Through it all, Foxy, the wonder dog, never left my side. I was at least secure. I did want to say, no matter what platform that you listen to our podcast on, even on YouTube, please subscribe to our podcast. You know, it costs you nothing, but it really helps us a lot on this end. We appreciate it. It's that time again. Take 'em home, sweetie pie.
Thank y'all for listening to the Free Range Texan podcast, produced at 18PR Studios, out yonder in West Texas, with our host, who's been voted the hardest working man in podcasting, Michael Shawn. Feedback or submissions to our program can be submitted on our website, freerangetexan.net. That's freerangetexan.net. This is Sweetie Pie, on behalf of Michael Shawn and the crew here in Studio A, where we're all looking forward to spending time with you on our next episode of the Free Range Texan podcast. Y'all come back now, you hear?
An 18PR production. End transmission.
That's all. Can we go now, Dad? Can we go now?